Um, okay, so this is my first open source software project, as the title says. Yeah, my name is Galin, and I'm just another dev. So I've been coding for a while professionally. I'm doing backend and DevOps, and basically my whole career is built on using open source software tools. But I never really contributed back to society. Boo. So actually, at one time I had like a PR to an OSS project, but like it never even got looked at. It's still open. Actually, I checked it out 2 days ago, so it's like pretty sad story. Uh, so what like what's the story behind this whole thing? I was working on a project at work, actually with Gabriel sitting right there, and so we were using Sequelize, which is a pretty famous, very used ORM for Node.js, and this other library that is built on top of Sequelize called Umzug. I think that's how it's pronounced. It's a migration tool, so that like you can program your like if you want some specific extra logic built around how you execute your database migrations and stuff. So the missing functionality was that we couldn't do migrations when we spin up and deploy multiple instances of a service at once. And nowadays, all the cool kids use microservices architectures, so obviously you're going to have more than one instances spinning up at the same time. So obviously we really needed this functionality, but it was not there. There was no any safeguarding or locking of the tables or of the database around this around executing migrations. So I started looking around, and seemed like other people were facing the same problem. As you can see, comments on GitHub. This guy is my favorite. He was I kind of darkened out his username, and sorry, it looks a bit like a dick, but yeah, like the guy seems pretty angry that this thing is not there. And I actually stumbled upon my own like request for this functionality from apparently another project I was working on like 4 years ago. So this functionality was still not there. So I was like, okay, gotta implement it myself. Uh, so I implemented it. It was working well, but eventually I didn't open source it. We just continued using it at work, didn't spend the time into releasing it. So just to tell you a bit about the solution, like to explain it in a more technical way, just to match with the other guys' presentations. So like imagine you have the database, and you're spinning up four services at the same time, and like if they all try to make to execute migrations towards the database, some bad things can happen. Like if you're augmenting some data, or like if you're, for example, just creating some resource in the database, okay, the first migration will succeed, the others will fail because the resource is already there. But if you're augmenting some data, then some pretty messy stuff can happen. So this is what I came up with. Yes, so the first service, it doesn't have to be the first one spinning, but the first service that gets there acquires a lock and on a table. And if that's successful, then the service will execute the migrations. Then when other services try to acquire the lock, they'll be rejected, so no migrations will be executed. Then even after the migrations can be executed and the lock is released, if it happens so that another service acquires the lock, well, there'll be no migration execute anymore. So nothing will happen, and it's safe. Um, I have tested this, so it's running in production, and I've tested it with up to 6 instances running at the same time. Seems pretty safe. Yeah, so yeah, so far it's been tested only with Postgres. But SQLize and Umzug, they are, what was the word? Agnostic, exactly, thank you, with the database. They even work with some NoSQL database like Mongo, so. But I haven't tested with others than Postgres. So yes, after it was implemented and being used at work, as I said, I never really released it until like 1.5 years ago. Sorry, later. Eventually, I mean, I actually really wanted to release it for a long time, but ain't nobody got time for that when you have beers to drink, right? And but like actually just like a couple of weeks ago, um, I just got notifications on GitHub because I had commented under these issues, and I just started reading through old posts, and I saw like a bunch of guys have commented over the time that, I mean, even a maintainer of the library was like, like we need, uh, and yeah, so I'm like, okay, we gotta do this, and yeah, yeah. Damn it. So yeah, it's like I was talking with some friends about it, and like my friend's comment was the last thing that pushed me. He was like, "Man, just release it and let someone else improve it later." Because at least for me, but I think it's a common thing when we have something that we want to share, we want to make it perfect before we give it out there to the world, and that's usually like spending the time into making it perfect is the hardest thing. And so yeah, just let it out there, even if it's rough, and if people need it and use it, they'll just improve it. So yeah, the hardest thing was to find the time. Obviously, I mean, I didn't get to that for a whole year and a half. Eventually, I spent like a couple of Sunday evenings instead of Netflixing around, and like maybe a couple more evenings. So I abstracted it out of the project that we were using it in, so that it can be a standalone library and anybody can plug it in. Um, and I got to like publish it on npm, and then the the damn name, like all the names of the library that I could come up with were already used. So like for the lack of a better name, I came up with what I have now. Um, it's not the most fun name, but it just describes what it does. And a week, I already have like 83 downloads. Yes. Um, so yeah, that's the fruit of all my effort, and that's the end. Do you have any questions? I can throw the mic at you. Yeah. Well, I actually used it and tested it before, like I put it on npm. So actually, none of these downloads are mine. So yeah. All right. So if no other questions, here's a potato for you. Yeah, I think the main thing was that I just didn't have a problem to solve that hasn't been solved, if that makes sense. So yeah, this thing popped up, and I saw that there is no like simple solution out there, or at least not for my particular use case. So that, I think that's the main trigger. Just like any other software being created, you know, you just solve a particular problem. So yeah. Sure. No, not exactly. So, um, so a server application, and then you have a database behind it, right? So, um, you, of course, you can go in and directly change the database or change some data or change the structure, but uh, you don't really want to do that because if you do that manually, you'll have to do it on every environment that you have deployed, like development, staging, production, whatever else. Also, manual changes can be quite dangerous. You can screw up something, especially if you actually have to mutate a bunch of data. Um, yes, just whatever change. Yeah, it can be just adding new users, creating new tables, deleting tables, like changing, yeah, or a lot of times just updating, like just adding a column. I would say it's a common development practice. You wanna have all the. It's kind of like Git, but for database changes. Like through these migrations, you keep track of what has been changed. So if you spin up a new environment, you get like you just deploy your service with a connection to the database, and you don't have to worry about setting up or making these changes, replicating them as the other environments, because the migrations will execute one after another in the exact same steps that you have been developing them over time and making these gradual changes of the database. And the cool thing is that you can also roll back as many steps as you want if you want a particular. So yeah. Yeah, exactly. For the state of the database. Yes, yes, yes. Yeah. And yeah, the problem was that, of course, when you spin up multiple instances at once, you have to have some kind of a mechanism to tell that only one instance, because it's identical, identical instances of the same server application spinning up at the same time, and you want to have some mechanism to tell uh, everybody that only this particular instance is going to execute the migrations, because you don't want to execute the same migration multiple times. Yes, wherever you spin up the certain state version of this application. Yes. Um, yes, yes, you can. Well, just say. You can see here like the different migrations over time. These are timestamps, and that's like different migrations over months. And like I believe the names are quite descriptive. At some point, we are like creating different tables. Then we are adding some type of some column to the tables. Here we are doing like certain actually just data augmentation and um, like yeah, I mean, we're going into technical details here, but it's just like a history of how you change your data. Well, you don't. It's just logical code. Like it doesn't preserve anything. You just run it once. Like it just makes a. Yeah, you just basically declare what changes you want to happen to the database. All right. Um, well, I cannot open the database that this example, I can, but it'll take a while because I don't have the connection set up right now. But basically, in the database, apart from all your tables that contain your normal application data, you also have, as part of these tools, you have a table which basically has a list of all these migrations, and then it records what has been executed in a sequence. So when you run your application, these tools that I was using for connecting to the database and migrating, they will first look into that table and see, okay, what was the last migration that was executed? Then it will look here in this list of files and see what was the corresponding last migration file, and then you'll take everything later than that and just basically execute this code. It can be SQL, or it can be using the ORM, and just basically migrate this, like execute these migrations and change the state of the database. But the migrations themselves, they don't preserve any state. It's just a description of what you want to change in the database. Yeah, like you would only roll back in case something goes wrong with the current migration that you are executing. But yeah, because usually you just execute the migration and then you're done, like you have augmented the data state. Yeah. All right, I guess that's it. But we can talk more afterwards, after the presentation is done. I would be happy to explain anything. Yeah. Thank